Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Win with Heather Havenwood. And, about entrepreneurship is about a ton of things. Entrepreneurship is about creativity. Entrepreneurship is about going out there and making money, right? But then entrepreneurs sometimes have a hard time doing this thing called investing their own money, right? Because we're not forced to have a 401k plan. We're not forced to have these conversations like corporate America is. So I'm excited to have my guest on today is Damion Lupo. Damion, are you on the line?
I am. It's good to be here, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Now, what's so funny about Damion, he's down the street from me. Right, so we're both in Austin. We're like half a mile apart, and we're doing a video conference. But that's the beauty of online. So let me introduce you to who Damion is, an entrepreneur at heart. First business at age 11, started 30 more since, and founder of his own martial art. Okay, I'm going to break that up. Yokido.
Got it.
Woo. Trademark too, and holder of 3 black belts. Damion paid for his first rental house with a Visa credit card, bought 150 houses in 7 states over the next 5 years, and then went through a $20 million breakdown. Oh, sorry, meltdown. Oh, meltdown in 2008.
And a breakdown.
Well, you and I kind of had that similarity. I went through a meltdown and a breakdown in 2007-8. So, and today he runs an Austin-based FinTech dedicated to disrupting Wall Street by getting people off the Wall Street roller coaster and in control of their money and financial future. Damion has written 5 books, with 2 more being released in 2017. Well, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Good. So, first of all, you and I have a lot in common in 2008, right? Your number was higher than mine, 20 mil. I'm curious because a lot of people was funny. I don't know about your experience with this when I talk about the bankruptcy. It's like people want to let's not talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk about that. But there's a lot of juice when you go through something like that. Can you talk about that experience for you and what you learned through that experience of doing that?
Yeah, now I love talking about it because it's open and there's
Yeah.
there's not this fear of hiding or judgment or anything. Um, I remember going through it in 2008 and really wanting to pretend it didn't happen for a couple of years, like a lot
Me
of
too.
people are still doing. Yeah, well, and it was funny because in 2010 I was still ignoring the reality. I wasn't answering the question, what is true? Like, what is true? Who am I? And
Yeah.
it took me getting fired from a volunteer position on a U.S. Senate campaign and ignoring it and pretending I resigned for a while. And I finally went, wait, this is crazy. I've got to just acknowledge the truth about everything, take responsibility. And that's when things started changing. And that's the problem with anybody that's not acknowledging bankruptcy or melting down or the mistakes. You can't fix anything because you got to start with yourself.
God, that is so true. I mean, I'm like ding, 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 ding. I think, we're looking at the current presidency now. We're not talking about politics, but he's been through a lot of failure. He's gone bankrupt, and I found it interesting, funny that during the election, the pre-election process, they were trying to take that as a bad thing. He's been through bankruptcy, and I'm like, that's kind of a good thing because look where he is now. It's not what you went through; it's how you overcame it, right?
Yeah, and I remember the same thing when people were saying, "Oh, he's done this and he's had this many things fail," and I'm going, "You guys are idiots. You literally have never done anything other than have been a perfect straight A student. You don't get what it's like to be in the real world. It's easy to criticize and condemn. The reality is the people that we look up to have fallen on their face 1,000 times, and so you do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better, to get the ratings, but you're never going to be in that position. So just criticize. I mean, that's what you'll always be as a critic."
I completely agree. And someone told me literally 6 months after my bankruptcy, I was in tears. I was the same as you. I mean, not the same as you, but for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm a loser. I'm a loser. I'm a loser. And someone said to me, Heather, you've never given yourself permission to fail. And it's only in the moment you give yourself permission to fail, which you will succeed. And we see that currently today. And, we are with President Trump. You see, because his was so massive. There was a massiveness. I think that a friend of mine, Joe Sugarman, he says, yes, I'm successful. He's a multimillionaire. But let me tell you the 15 places I failed. Right.
People miss that. They don't
miss
they don't
that.
actually see that when they see the success. They don't realize all the times people have fallen down and that they had to get back up. They
Yeah.
just it we're so used to seeing these quote unquote
Success.
overnight success stories for everything, and we think that that's all it was. Somebody just showed up and their genetics created this thing, and it wasn't. It was the perseverance. It was willing to make the mistakes and learn and then grow and get bigger and
Mhm.
better, and ultimately you pop up and it looks like, wow, that's amazing. It's so easy. It's not. It's
It's
perseverance.
not easy. And I think one of the worst things it sounds so bad, but when people say they look up to Mark Zuckerberg, I'm like, why? He's never
Right.
fallen ever. He created this in his dorm room and it's like a one hit bajillionaire. I mean, like he's gonna write it forever, and he'll probably die with Facebook. But think about it. He never failed. He never had a public
That's what
humiliation.
a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for that next the .com thing, the next Snap or whatever it is. And that's a crazy plan. It's
Crazy
literally
plan.
like pretending you're going to be a unicorn, and that's your plan. I'll be a unicorn, and then everybody will pay attention to me.
Right.
Dude, you're not a
Yeah.
unicorn. It's not real.
Zuckerberg is a unicorn. It's just
Totally a
he's just
unicorn.
one. Even Steve Jobs had more depth. You know what I mean? Even Gates
He
had
fell
more
on his
depth. He
face.
fell flat on his face. He got fired from his own damn company. I mean,
Right.
you're out. Like, wait, I started this thing. I mean, Gates. If you see his story before, he constantly knocked on doors and constantly had the door thrown in his face during the IBM. I mean, so at least some depth to them. I just think that unfortunately the current millennials see Zuckerberg and they're like, oh, that's how it works. And I think that's a huge detriment. So I think it's cool. It's like a not a kindred spirits kind of thing that you've been through that experience. And I'll show you this one thing. I want to go into this financial piece, which is, did you ever watch that movie, The Short?
The Big Short?
The Big Short, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you like see your life on the timeline? Is the same?
I felt it. I mean, when being in that thing, and that was one of the strangest things, because that was probably the first time I'd ever watched a movie where I went, "Oh my gosh, I remember these moments in time," and I was like living it again. It was crazy.
I was in the movie theater, like I remember that, like it's big busting me, like tapping down, like, oh, I remember that day. Oh yeah, because when they do in the movies, they do the timeline, and this was this day in 2006 and 7 and 8. I'm like, oh my god, I remember. Oh my god, I remember that. You know, it was like I was reliving everything. And what's so weird about that movie that kind of gave me this feeling of like I'm normal, kind of, is that seeing how many people it affected. Like because where I went was I'm stupid, you know, and it's like no, it was something way bigger than me.
I wrote a book in 2012 about this whole thing called Reinvented Life, and it almost made me a little sad after I wrote it, because for me, I wrote it with a buddy of mine to get our stories out there, and part of it was not to just get them out there, but to get them out of us. And because there was so much toxicity that was sitting in there, we needed to get clear on what we'd done, the mistakes we made. And if you really want to own your mistakes and understand what you know, you got to write about it, and you put it in front of yourself and you go, whoa. But when we did that, I remember sharing this story during our launch, and I remember some guys walking up to me and going, I didn't realize that other people had gone through this stuff. And I've just been sitting here just like freaking out for the last few years. And I went, wow, no, man, you're not alone. Like a lot of people went out there and we pushed it. We did things. We took action. We didn't just hide and cower away. We really went out there, and you know what? You're not alone. So good for you for going out there and realize that you're part of a tribe of people that are making things happen. And we don't always hit it, but we are hitting it hard. So just know you're not alone.
You're not alone in the failures and successes. It's not just about successes. So let's talk about what you do now. So by the way, I wanted to ask you, during that time you bought a lot of houses. Where were you in? Nevada, Florida? Where were you?
Okay, the question is, where was I not? I mean, the funny part is those are the two places I think I was not. I was in 7 different states: Arizona, Alabama, North Carolina, Maine. That was one of my bazillion mistakes, was being all over the place. And the truth is, we can make our wealth, if we're talking financial wealth, we can make $1 billion in our backyard. And people think that you have to go somewhere else to do it. You don't. You have to be focused. And I thought, well, I'm going to take over the country. Pre-Trump, I was thinking I was going to be the next Trump, and just in terms of being a dominant, real estate tycoon. So I figured I might as well just take over the country. And that was my ego talking. It didn't need to happen, but that's what I thought needed to happen because of the lack of experience.
Yeah, someone interviewed me yesterday. I'm curious what you think of this. Someone interviewed me the other day and asked me about my real estate investing. I'm getting back into it myself. And I said, it's really boring. Now when I invest, it's simple. It's boring. It's conservative. It's consistent. It's no so I'm curious now what you teach, because that's where my mindset is. I feel like I'm an old grandpa now, like, get the life insurance, honey, but I feel the investors, the few investors I did see that were able to sustain and were able to go through that huge dip, Trump was one of them too. I mean, during that time of the dip, he bought crap load of real estate. Like, good for him, man. He was one of the few left that had the money to do it. But ones that were consistent, they're the ones who were just consistent. They were just nice and easy,
The more I think about that, the people that went through that thing and did really well were not the ones that were going through a cycle for the first time.
Right.
I don't actually know anybody that started off like when we did before that in the early 2000s without a cycle behind them, without the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Having gone into that, we went blind, and so we got hurt. And there were billions made right after the crash where people were able to pick things up. The way that they were doing that is they weren't stuck freaking out trying to figure themselves out. And for a lot of us, we were stalled out because we lost our confidence by being kicked in the head. And people that had gone
So
through
true.
the cycles before,
Hmm.
either they didn't get clobbered or they got clobbered and they didn't tie their self-worth and net worth together, so they weren't stuck for the next few years. And that's when the opportunities were, and that's when we'll see opportunities that are epic again when the next cycle happens. So if you're in the middle of the bling and the bliss and the happy and everything works out right now, next time this thing crashes, the opportunities will be there, but you won't be ready
Right.
because you'll be nursing your wounds. And that's the big problem. It's the loss of confidence when there's really the opportunity right in front of you.
And again during the election night, there was a lot of there's a lot of talk, right? And I remember there was somebody, Elizabeth Warren, I think, was like, he's a horrible person during the time when everyone was down. He was buying real estate. I'm like, he's smart.
Smart.
I wish I had that. I was over there licking my wounds. Like, I don't have
Right.
anything to buy, So he was the one going, "Oh, this is nice." Like he was just smart. So I just thought to myself, how in the heck are you spinning that as a negative? I don't know. The fact that he didn't get pulled into that is the fact that he's an investor, been around a while. Like you said, he's had other cycles, you know what I mean, behind him. And you
Hmm.
realize, so what do you teach? I mean, now that you went through that process, what's your philosophy now? What do you teach entrepreneurs? I think there's something really juicy here, that entrepreneurship, first, I think it's a journey. I don't think it's a destination. That's my view. And then I also think that we're not taught at school anyway on how to be, intellectual on money anyway. So then you deal with entrepreneurship land, and it's even like sometimes worse. So what's your philosophy that you teach now? What's like the simple piece of that? What's your philosophy?
If it was boiled down to one word, it'd be mastery. And so
Mm,
the work that I've been doing is really kind of runs in parallel with all of the work I've done in martial arts. It's all about mastery. You don't just learn some technique in martial arts and you get a black belt and you're done. It's really a process that you're going deeper and deeper into yourself. It's the same thing with investing or entrepreneurship. You keep growing and you keep doing things. And so what I'm teaching with people is to help them get past wherever they're stuck. And oftentimes it's stuck right where they are, where they're starting. They don't have a clue where to even go. And so we start figuring out what the belief systems that are blocking them are
yeah.
and really moving past that into action. And it's simple action because people, if they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake and it's going to hurt, we avoid pain. And so typically with investing, there's only two things that are really this intense. It's money and it's sex. Those two things we don't talk about. We want to avoid pain. We pretend they don't exist for some reason, and yet they drive damn near everything we are and do. So we ask tough questions. When I work with people, it is not a pleasant conversation oftentimes because we're digging into root belief systems and asking what's true. What are you really doing? What are you really all about? What are you
Mm,
really afraid of? And a lot of people are just hunkered down with the belief systems that they were embedded with from when they were kids. And like, for example, people think I'm supposed to store money in a 401k and invest in a mutual fund, and I invest for the long term. Warren Buffett tells me to. And I go, well, wait a second. Warren Buffett trades the market. He sells options.
yeah.
So you're telling me that he's telling you one thing, you're going to buy into it, and you're not actually going to do what he actually does. So we start undoing all these belief systems that people have that are keeping them stuck in this bondage and this
Hmm.
roller coaster that they're on in Wall Street.
So that's awesome. I love that. That's more about the mindset and the belief system. But is there a particular thing that you teach, like how to do stocks, or are you,
Yeah, what I do
strategy?
technically is I get people out of the Wall Street system, and basically
Okay.
what that means is we're exiting the 401ks and the IRAs,
Yeah.
and we're putting people's money in their hands. And this comes back to the values that drive my company and me personally, which is self-responsibility. So if your retirement money is in your hands, you can't be a blamer, you can't be a victim, you can't be
Right.
pointing the finger because the fingers go right back to you. And so ultimately, we shift people's money from their all these retirement accounts where they're
Hmm.
trapped and into their own checking account. Sometimes people have heard of things like self-directed IRAs where you get more control. We've got something that's 1,000 times better. Literally, it's 10 times better than an IRA. It's
Mm.
called the QRP. And that's where you've got this checkbook control, and you've got all these options on basically anything you can imagine. And then you start figuring out what fits you. So that might be real estate. It might be precious metals. It could be private equity. It could be a Jimmy John's sandwich shop. I don't know. That the actual investing, the thing isn't as important as the thinker and who's driving this thing. We just give you all the options, and you're not stuck anymore. So you're not getting feed to death, and you're not getting stuck in something that doesn't make sense for you anymore.
Okay, so a couple things. Is it be your own banker? I've never heard of KRP or.
The QRP is the qualified retirement plan. It was built back in the early 70s, and it's what governs the 401ks.
Yeah.
This is just a different version where you're actually in control. So you're not stuck with a broker telling you, hey, just hang tight, come back to me in 40 years.
Yeah.
You literally have a checkbook with your money. It's not I think you may be talking about bank on yourself.
Yeah.
No, this is not insurance. I have a huge problem with the insurance industry because they basically make a ton of money off of people, off their fears. And what we do is we give people and we teach them the confidence so that the fears start to go away and they can actually move forward. And they're not happy with 1 or 2 or 3%, which is what bank on yourself and those type of insurance things are all about. Few percent and you're safe and no roller coaster. I think that's BS. How are you going to ever do anything with your life making 3%? You're not going to get anywhere.
No, not when credit cards are taking 18 and 20, 22%.
That's right.
Okay, so QRP, now I'm assuming, just go down details for a second. What does that mean exactly? Is that are they not, it's already money that's been taxed, or 401k, maybe it hasn't pre or no. I mean, what is it, a pre-tax, post-tax?
It's actually either one. So what
Okay.
in the retirement vehicle space, in 401ks and IRAs, you've got pre-tax, tax deferred money, and you've got Roth, which means
Okay.
it gets taxed now, and then as it grows and as you take it out, there's no tax.
Mhm.
So with the QRP, you've got those same options. You can defer taxes, or you can pay the taxes now. I like the idea of paying taxes now, and then down the road, whatever tax rates are, I don't care. And there's this myth that's propagated through the system where people say, hey, you should defer your taxes because you're going to be in a lower tax bracket later because you're not going to spend anything. And I go, why would I want to plan to be poor when I'm 60 years old? That's the stupidest thing to keep me small. If you're thinking big, if you're planning on being rich, that's a dumb plan. So I like the Roth where you can plan on paying no taxes down the road.
And then, so is this kind of, I'm just putting words in out there and just let me know if I'm on the right track. Is this like I'm use the word self-directed Roth, where one it's pre-tax dollars. I'm sorry, it's tax dollars, and then I can go and buy whatever. I can buy real estate or maybe another business or a franchise, something like that. Is that the concept? I want people to understand the concept.
Yeah, it's so at its core, it's self-directed. You get to choose where things go, and
Yeah.
you're using the 401k rules. So these are rules that are really, really clean, and they've been around for 40 years. So you're able to take this money in this type of account, the qualified account, which a 401k is a qualified account, but it's different because you get to go out there and you get to choose what you write your check for, whether it's real estate or something else. The neat thing about the qualified retirement plan, especially with real estate, is that you're able to buy real estate and use leverage. You can use debt, and that's cool. Here's the wild thing. Most people are buying real estate with their self-directed IRAs,
Right.
and they don't realize they're getting taxed up to 40% on their gains that are attributable to the debt. This is a huge problem because if you use debt to buy real estate, which is one of the best parts about real estate, you're going to get killed with the taxes in a tax-deferred vehicle. In the QRP, there's no tax.
So let's break it down for people. When you say buy real estate with debt, explain that.
So let's do an example. So you have a $100,000 house, and you want to buy that property with your IRA, and you have $10,000 in your IRA.
Okay.
So you take out a $90,000 mortgage, and then the property doubles to $200,000. So you made $100,000 on the whole deal, and now because 90% of your purchase was with debt, with your mortgage, 90% of that profit, the $100,000 you just made, you have to pay taxes on. It's going to be about 40% tax. If you did that with your QRP and you did the same exact debt, same $10,000 in cash that you invested, no tax.
That's pretty awesome. Can people do this, like buy franchises or buy businesses? Can they do that?
You can totally buy businesses. You can buy franchises. There's a limited number of things that you can't do that the IRS says can't do A, B, C, D. And that's basically it. You can't do those things, and you can do anything else you can dream up as long as it's not with a disqualified person like your kid or your parent or your spouse. But beyond that, it's really wide open.
Wow, that's I mean, I'm very familiar with self-directed IRAs. I'm very familiar with that. So are you, so tell us about your philosophy. Do people work with you one-on-one, or how do they work with you?
Yeah, there's two things that people work with us on.
Okay.
Typically, we get their vehicle. You can think of us as the we're like the Tesla of retirement plans. We
Yeah.
basically build the car and then you go drive it. And if you want to put it on autopilot with real estate or whatever it is, great. But you're in charge of driving your car,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're there. You can think of us as your co-pilot. So we're in the passenger seat and we're guiding you. If you want to talk with us, we're here. We've got people that are actually doing things. We're buying real estate. We're buying businesses. We've done this. We're not just thinking about doing it. We're not just saying, hey, yeah, we're in the middle of it because we started last month. We've
Yeah.
been doing it for decades. And so you've got this experience that's right next to you the entire way through. If you want to tap into it, it's there. If you don't, you're totally on your own. I mean, you can do whatever you want. So there's a relationship that continues. And that's one of our 6 values is relationship. We're right there with you the entire time.
So let's talk about business model, because I really love that. It's very interesting to me. And I know that people listening going, wow, this is new for me. I've never heard it before. I mean, first of all, self-directed IRAs in general, most people in America don't even know what that is because their brokers don't want to talk about it. Okay. So
No,
now you're talking
definitely
about
not.
even something else that I would say probably 0.1001% of the people understand. So I want to talk business model because I think people know the business model of brokers, right? We put money in, they take their little fees and all that good stuff. Wall Street, we understand that business model. When we deal with self-directed IRAs, that business model is pretty clear in what they do there too. So what is your business model? Like, how does that work? Because people are listening. Well, if I give him 100,000 QRP, like, is he a fee? How does that work? You know, that's where for me, that's where my mind's going. How does that work? Are you guys like a consulting brokerage?
No, Heather, it's a great question because that's one of the first questions you should always ask anybody that's saying, "Hey, we're an advisor."
Yeah,
The question is, what are you selling me?
right.
And how much are you going to charge? I mean, that's great that I'm making money, but we have to understand that there's a sales pitch and we are not a nonprofit. So we charge a fee to set the plan up,
Okay.
and then we have a fixed fee, $300 a year going forward to be your co-pilot, and you can use this or not. So that keeps it very
Awesome.
clean. An advisor is typically looking for 2 or 3%. In reality, that's typically what they're making
Yeah.
on your assets every single year. So you don't give us your money. You have 100,000 or $100. It doesn't make any difference. You're in charge of that money. You don't give it to us. It's a different model, and most people don't like this model because they would prefer to build up an asset base as an advisor with $100 million,
Mhm.
charge 2 or 3% a year, and be able to just cruise. I mean, that is a very good model for the advisor. It is a terrible model for people,
Yes.
and it doesn't work for them.
You know, I was I don't know if you know this about me, but I was an American Express financial advisor. I I worked for them.
Ooh.
I was like 18, 19, 20. I was in college
Mhm.
and I got basically, assistant role or whatever. And basically what I ended up doing, I was the one doing the cold calling to try to book the appointments. And then you got the person in, right? You got them in, got them to say yes to some stupid plan for $200 or whatever it was. And then the advisor, anyway, give me the data. I'm like 19. Like, what do I know, right? I'm 19. I enter in all this information, blah, 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 on some computer, and I press print. And they put it in this big fat binder and looks all pretty and stuff. And then the advisor, who's never even looked at the plan until they walk in the door, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, oh, Mr. We're so excited to talk to you about your plan. And they pull it, and then this is the first time they look at it. And the guy that I was working for, the advisor, was like one of the number ones in North Texas. Like, the guy was rocking it, right? And I realized this is a sales pitch. And the thing that I never understood the industry, and it was still weird to me even saying it, when they say products. Because, like, to me, this is a product. A mutual fund shouldn't be a product. You know what I mean? Like, here's mutual funds. It sounds like weird. But I feel like that's what the advisory role says, to kind of put them arm's length. Well, I'm just selling you a product. I don't know if it's going to work. It'll work. You know, they're just looking at the benefits. Meanwhile, this is a person's life. And so I think I never really liked that word products. And then I was 22 and they asked me to be a financial advisor. I'm like, 22. I don't know crap about this stuff. So I found out that it was it's a sales game. It was just it's just a numbers game. So I'm very interested more into people that are really interested in helping me lower taxes, right? Actually create businesses, real estate, different things, self-directed IRA, stuff like that. So that's what I hear. What's unique about your company?
It is, and when you mentioned the word product, I was thinking, what other word with a P would make the most sense when you're sitting there across from the quote unquote advisor, and really what you should be realizing, it's a pitch. It's a pitch to sell you something by somebody that knows how to pitch their goods from their firm. I mean, when I sold insurance 20 years ago, and I was like you, I was 19, 20 years old. I'm helping people structure their insurance, structure their financial stuff, and I can speak all this googly gook and I can say these expensive words, and people would follow along because I basically confused them. And it
Right.
wasn't because I was trying to screw them. It was because that was our pitch. It was, hey, this is too complex. Just trust me. I've got a nice suit on and I'm very smart and you're just not that smart. That's what the industry tries to force feed people, that they're not smart enough. And it is BS. Everybody is smart enough if they've got the will and the commitment to make their own stuff hapen, but we're just beaten down by the system, and the system wins every
It
time
does win every
by,
time. The house wins, right?
the house wins. Well, it's a casino. I
It's
mean,
a
when you think about it,
casino.
it totally is a casino. 80% of the profits in Wall Street with mutual funds
Mm-hmm.
go to the house. They go to the brokerage firms over a period of time where you're investing. You get 20%. So if there's profits, you get 20%. They get 80. You take on all the risk. That sounds like a casino to me. And by the way, that's John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. That's his quote. It's on the front of our website. He said that. That wasn't even me.
Wow. Well, it's true. I mean, the moment I learned that, what I call the dirty way, meaning I was worked for the company, pulled everything out of mutual funds, and I don't do it anymore. You know what I mean? I'd rather have the cash to buy business or cash. So, interesting. So, so can you do any case studies? Do you have any case studies or?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
let me give you a great one. I've got one of my favorite people ever. I've been working with them for about 2.5 years, and when they first came in, they said, "Hey, we've got IRAs, we've got 401ks, and we've got our cash, and we just sold a house. We've got a million and a half, and we're freaking terrified because our money's sitting in Wall Street. It's in a mutual fund, and every day we're watching the news, and we see these arrows. We see this green arrow that says the market did good. See a red arrow, market went down. And every day there's this anxiety.
Oh
Like, are we
my
gonna have our wealth tomorrow?
God. It's like
And I
fear,
and I
fear, fear.
it was crazy, and I could feel it with them. I could feel it in this conversation. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to get off this thing. And I said, okay, well, then great, let's do that. And so we spent the next few months just understanding what the plan was going to be. What did
Yeah.
they want to do? What did they really want to get to? They didn't want a pile of money. They didn't want 2 or 3 million versus a million and a half. They wanted to know that their expenses, their lifestyle was going to be sustained, and they wanted to be in control of it.
Yeah.
So the first decision that they made was to get out of Wall Street. They literally sold their stuff and said, okay, it's in cash. Now we don't care what happens to the market. And the second thing that happened,
Mm.
they had this IRA and 401k money, and they're stuck. And they said, well, what do we do with that? Because we want to invest it. And I said, great, you can use a QRP. Now they've got this checkbook and they can go and invest. And then they said, well, now what do we invest in? And I said, I don't know. Well, let's figure out what works for you. And what made sense to them was to create residual off of real estate stuff and by lending money out, being a bank. Because we know that
Mm-hmm.
banks make money because their names are on all these buildings in every city in the world. So I said, why don't you become the bank? How does that sound? And so they started doing hard money lending with their 401k money inside the QRP. And every month they're getting checks now. And they literally leave, they go to Europe or something. And in fact, I was in Europe with them and I said, hey, did you see what happened in the markets yesterday? And they said, no, we don't really care. And I said, drop 500 points. And they said, yeah, but we're out of it. It doesn't matter to us. And that was the shift. They no longer cared what
Weird.
happened in the markets. They didn't care what happened in the presidential election. It wasn't like Trump or Hillary was going to save them. They were in control, and they knew that they were writing their own future, that they didn't have somebody else determining it. It was a huge shift, and their level of
Wow.
peace, epic.
Oh,
Totally, totally free.
huge epic piece there. I mean, that's just feeling that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love that. And that's if people hear like what's hard money, I'll just give you a little clue into hard money lending is basically saying you don't have to go to the bank to get a mortgage. I'll be your mortgage, right? So I'm going to lend you the money and we'll create a contract just like that. And then you pay me every single month with a set fee, right? The cool thing about that is you get to set the fee, right? The percentage, you get to set that now, right? And so some people use hard money loans for bridge loan. They call them bridge loans where you just need it for rehab, stuff like that. So I think it's really powerful. I think I also love the fact that more people are doing that, because when more people understand hard money lending and they do that, that actually helps the investors. That helps the entire community to be able to move things. Because lots of times bankers, they get really restrictive. One, they have a lot of rules, but two, they just get restrictive. And bankers know nothing about money. Nothing.
Bankers have banker brains, and
Yeah.
and you talk to them, and they have their rules set, and they have their fears
They
and
have
their
this little
anxieties.
box. It's
It's
a very
narrow,
small box. This
super
box is
small
like, if you don't
box,
fit in this tiny
right?
little box, they don't want anything to do with you, and they think you're an idiot. I mean, I've been there.
Yeah, yeah, but it's crazy because of Dodd-Frank and the Patriot Act and all these regulations that have happened. Even if you've got a creative banker, and I've had some really great bankers that were a lot smarter than most boneheads, quite frankly, and they go, "I'd love to do this, but I can't. The regulations will not allow me to do this," which is why the shadow banking, which is the hard money, the stuff outside of the
Right.
traditional banking, why that's exploding, and the banks
Mhm.
are frustrated because they're trying to figure out how to compete with
They
shadow
can't.
banking with all the alternatives. And what their answer is, let's have more regulation. That way it'll force the shadow banking activities to be squashed and we can continue to make money. But people are creative, and the entrepreneurs out there are finding solutions to disrupt that thing, which I love so much.
That's awesome. I love that. In fact, I just talked to someone today who's a client, and she said, I gave her so much credit for doing this. She literally went to 5 banks, and here, I think locally in Austin, Central Texas, and gave the business plan. They did the whole thing. And they said, yeah, we need collateral. We need your house.
Right.
She's like, I don't want to I don't want to put my house up. Well, bye, and she was very frustrated. And I tried to explain to her, I'm like, they have this little tiny box. And if you don't fit in this box, they don't, literally bankers are told, especially ones in local office, they're told this is how it works. And if you don't go with this box, you got to tell them no. And they're just told that. And they view credit cards and loans as products. It's a product. It's not to help people. It's not a vehicle. It's a product. And if you think of that way, you can see the dynamic. And then, also I got an opportunity to meet one of the 12, I call it the 12, of the Federal Reserve. That was an interesting story. So there's 12, there's 12 banks, the Federal Reserve, and then there's Janet Yellen, who's the top and the chairman. And by the way, the Federal Reserve is not owned by the government. It's the third party.
And they have no reserves.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not owned by the government. Okay. So, and I'm sitting here talking to this guy. He's one of they call him presidents. So I'm sitting here talking to this guy, and I'm asking all these crazy questions. And I started to realize right then, like that little voice in my head of like, you're talking to one of the 12 people in the country that are running the country and the money. Right. And the Washington and the White House and even Wall Street really doesn't control it like they do. So if you think of it that way, when you put your money into Wall Street and you're just hoping and praying, you really are putting your money with people you don't know, and you don't know their agenda, and you don't know where they're really taking things. But when you're putting your money with yourself and things that you really know and can feel strong about, I think that's where the peace of mind comes in.
It is. You're never going to feel totally peaceful until you build that confidence that you can do it and you are doing it. And it's, if you think that hope and praying that your money is going to grow, you're literally smoking hopium. That is the stupidest plan that people have been conned into doing. Hey, I'm just going to take another drag of this hope and it'll all work out. That is nuts. You have no control over that. It's all about having control. And that's basically building your confidence muscle. That's the place where people should be investing their time and their money, is developing that confidence. It's not just throwing money out there and hoping it works. That's crazy.
Okay, so someone who's listening, they're like, wow, that's a great story about your client, but I didn't sell a property that has 1.2. So I'm starting with, a little bit of savings here and there. How can I have a different mindset of money? I don't know where to start investing. Do I invest? Where do I go? What do I do? I want to work with you, but I'm not going to walk in the door with $1 million with you. Like, what would you say to them?
I think the people that are listening to this right now are doing the right thing. They're immersing in this stuff, in the information, in the psychology, the right place. The worst thing to do is to spend time with people that you've spent time with that are not speaking this game, because part of this is just becoming it, and you become it by absorbing the people around you. So you have to, the first place I tell people to start is figure out who's around you. And then you can start to understand why you are the way that you are. And if you want to switch things, start to change the influences. And it's what you study. It's not necessarily that you go buy something, a piece of property or something. That's not necessarily what you need to do. You don't need to flip something or make $1 million to come in and start to shift. It's simply going down a different path, and that starts with the stuff that you're putting in your brain, and you start there. And then the thing that I missed, that I completely blew when I first started, is my ego got so excited when I started making money that I felt like I didn't need to listen to people. And if you want to shortcut a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the pain, you have somebody with you. You hire somebody that's going to coach you. And there are so many great people out there right now that will simply hold you accountable, ask you questions, and allow you to get past your own stuff, your own anxieties. Doing that, surrounding yourself with the right people and getting somebody that's going to hold you accountable, that's a pro, not your cousin, not your spouse, but somebody that's actually a pro, because you'll pay attention to what you pay for. And if you're paying for people to hold space and ask you questions, you're going to accelerate through a process that took me 2 decades.
So someone says, "Great, where do I start reading? I mean, what do I not read? Because there's a lot out there. If you put in the word finance in Amazon, it's nuts, right? So
yeah, the place that I tell people this same thing every time is go out and look for people that have actually done things. Listen to the ones that have done it. Don't listen to people that are just talking about it, that happen to be really smart. And I heard somebody talking on a show one time, and I point blank asked him. I said, "So when did you start investing in real estate?" And he seemed like a nice guy. He goes, "Well, I started my portfolio in 2011." I go, "Literally, dude, you're 60 years old and you're telling me that you know what you're talking about? You don't have a clue about cycles. I want somebody that's been around for 15 or 20 years, that's actually gone through it. That's who I'm going to pay to play, if you will." And it's, you get that person. There's not that many people. Those people are out there. That's who I recommend you go find. It's not just somebody that talks a big game, somebody that's been in the game.
Yeah, no, I know. I actually know some people that have been around. You know what I mean? Like there's about 2 or 3 in my head right now that I know that if someone asked me where to go, I'd be like, go to them. Why? Because they were there back in '99 and they're still here. Right? And they're still
those are the people that smell stuff. They have this almost like X-ray vision of what's going on. And it's not well, I'm not really sure what to do. I can tell you what's happening. I can smell it. I know what this is like because I've been through the pain. I've got scar tissue that make people cry. And so you want that X-ray vision. You don't want people figuring it out with you. You want them to say, "I can see what's going to happen in 6 or 12 months. I know where you're going with this deal. I can sense this deal is bad." And they can tell you why. I mean, that's who you want on your team. This is not a solo event. If it is, you're going to get killed.
You are. I mean, so I remember living in Orlando, right? And looking at downtown Orlando and there's like 15 cranes or 10 or 15 cranes at any time building. And I look at Austin right now and
same thing,
right? It's been like that for like 3 years. Every time I turn around, there's like 13, 10. I mean, I make like a note of it when I go around I-35 in Barton Springs. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. I start counting, right? And I'm like, there's 13, there's 12, there's 11, there's 10. Rady Street, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And and I have a friend of mine. There's a dear friend of mine down the street he's older. He's in his 60s, and he's been in Austin for years, and he's seen all cycles. And he goes, "Oh, do you have any cranes or in downtown?" I'm like, "Yeah, right now there's like 10 or 13." He goes, "Yep, that's a sign." You know what I mean? So you have to be willing to be smart and not act like you're 21 and act like, "Oh, this will go forever." And seeing that things go up 25 and 25%, 25%, 25% every single year can't sustain, right? So I think you need to be smart about it. I love what you're doing. Where can people find you if they're like, "I love this, you rock. How can I work with this guy?" Where can they go?
Fastest place to get to me is DamionLupo.com. That's where you're going to be able to connect with me immediately, whether it's social media or just directly, and see my writings. And then the stuff that we're talking about with the QRP is at TotalControlFinancial.com. That's the company, the philosophy, the team. If that resonates, it's not hard to get a hold of me. I've got people that pop up and will say hi on LinkedIn, and I've got a question, and that's one of the coolest things where I would never meet these people, and they've become friends. And it's knowing that I didn't have this access 20 years ago. There wasn't the LinkedIn and the Facebook and all that stuff. And so I'm just kind of bouncing around by myself in the ocean. And now people can say, "I have no idea what to do." And you know what? Reach out, because I'm actually going to reach back out to you. I'm not going to just blow you off. I've been there, and it's part of me wanting to connect with people that I know I was once.
I remember we were around when there was no Twitter and there was no Facebook. You know what, people? That was a day. There was a moment.
The old days.
The old day. The back in the day. The like the old recordings, the VCR days. No, it wasn't that back.
Oh, boys.
It wasn't that back, but it feels like it has been. I mean, my first Facebook account was 2007. My Twitter account was like 2007 or 8 as well. So anyway, I just think it's funny that, it's old school.
We've been around, Heather.
I know.
Been around a while.
I'm not even 50. I'm not even close to that. I barely hit 40. I'm like, well, how am I old? When did that happen? Anyway, so thank you so much. I want to make sure everyone knows how to spell your name. It's DamionLupo.com, or go check them out at totalcontrolfinancial.com or DamionLupo.com. Damion, thank you so much for being here on the Win and sharing with basically entrepreneurs on how they can actually get control of their money versus just giving it over to Wall Street.
It's been awesome. Thanks, Heather. I really appreciate you having me.
You're welcome. All right. This is Heather Havenwood with The Win. You go to heatherhavenwood.com/podcast. Check me out also at Havenwood on Twitter. Talk to you soon.